RED Plus is reduction of emission from deforestation and forest degradation, plus, in developing countries. And I like to stress the word developing countries, which means that this is a country that is still developing. It means that for me and for Indonesia, RED Plus is basically a development agenda affected by climate change, specifically applied to the land which is forested and surrounding it. So for us, it's a development agenda affected by climate change, and this needs to be done in a more sustainable and equitable basis. That is RED Plus for us.
And Indonesia is a country with vast forest stock, so I guess this is one of your core sort of aims to ensure an effective RED Plus deal here in Lima.
Yeah, well, Indonesia is one of the largest owner of tropical rainforest. I think the third largest in the world. And that covers more than 50% of our land. So it is very relevant for us. About 63% of our projected emission for 2020 will come from this sector, the forest and the agriculture and the landscape sector. So it is very significant for us when you're speaking in the climate change issues, but more significant when you're talking about development programs, development issues.
And there's been a lot of focus on the safeguards that surround RED Plus, and also some of the, additional conditionalities around the project, one of which is ensuring that there is a balance between men and women, and an equity when it comes to ensuring that communities gain access to funds. Tell us a bit about why you think this is important in the context of Indonesia.
Well, I will stress again, this is about development. And when you're talking about development, you're talking about from to. From what condition into what condition, right? That is development. And I'm talking about that from to, we have to see the base. Are we actually addressing the issue of the informal community, like the community of what in the word called indigenous community, we call that masyarakat adat. Okay, the masyarakat adat was not recognized in the past. We need to recognize that. From not recognized into recognized and given the rights. Also the case of the gender inequality that we have. In the past, the women are not given the perspective that they need to have. Access as well as the rights of the women themselves. So development talks about from that into something that is better. We put that into our RED Plus program, seriously, okay? The reason for that is not only because it's the right, but because it has been very powerful. It has a very powerful effect. You see, when you're talking about the knowledge that the community, the indigenous community, that the local community have, who capture that? It's the mother. It's the mother that has the knowledge to protect the land. It's the mother that has the knowledge to actually manage, all right, the economy in a good way. So that knowledge needs to be harnessed. So when in the past that knowledge was not recognized, we need now to put that into the higher level of recognition, and which means that gender equality is not just that I like to have it, it's a must. It's inherently the power that will make RED Plus work.
Why do issues like this, though, need to be placed in international treaty? I mean, surely gender equality, which is very important, is a matter for national jurisdictions to decide how they approach that based on their own cultures and their own ways of working.
Well, climate change is a global problem that will need global solution. Not a single country can actually solve the global problem of climate change. But if a single country is not contributing, the global problem cannot be solved. Now, when you're talking about the global community, the global problem, global solution, then you're talking about from to. What is the global community looking into this gender issue? Are they looking at it the right way? Is it something that is country to country difference, or is it in aggregate? The world is not balanced in terms of looking and also capitalizing on the capacity that both gender has, both individually or and working together between the different gender in this case. So I think being a global problem that needs global solution, country to country, you need to have this holistic approach in terms of addressing this. But not only that, countries with countries needs to work together to make it work. Otherwise, it's not going to be a solution.
A final question, in terms of REDD+, it's obviously going to need financial support up to 2015 and long after. What kind of figures, from Indonesia's perspective, are you looking at in terms of the support that you will need to ensure that REDD+ can be a success in your country?
Well, our second national communication said by the 2020, our emission is going to be 2.9 gigaton. Having a 2.9 gigaton, and you're talking about the REDD+ or the land base, which is now, if you're trying to look into the cost of getting that there, maybe will contribute 80% of that reduction, 41%. 2.9 gigaton, 41% reduction, means that the reduction is about 1.9, okay? And then 80% will need to come from the land-based activities, about 1 gigaton. 1 gigaton will be required to reduce that emission by the year 2020. Just assume that the price of carbon is $5, which is very low and very understated. You will need about $5 billion US dollars. Okay, but we'll say that actually 10 is perhaps better. So between 5 and 10 billion US dollar is required. We are at this moment
by 2020.
By 2020, and then after every year after that, because we are reducing continuously, right? And that is, we have right now our letter of intent, our agreement with Norway, which is basically talking about payment for results. It has a value of about 1 billion US. Okay, it's just 1/10 of what is required. So where do we get the rest of the money to do that? We will need to think very creatively, and not only intergovernment, but also inter-community, which means linking the government with the private sector, with the other sources of funding, because again, as I mentioned, this is a global problem, and we are talking about global problem. It's not only the problem of 196 some countries. It's the problem of the corporations, it's the problem of the people, it's the problem of the community itself, and also the academics. Everybody needs to chip in. You see, again, this is issue of REDD+ is an issue of development affected by climate change. Climate change is a global problem, and the global problem needs global solution. Every country needs to contribute.